Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English with Billy. I'm your host, Billy, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. This is the podcast where we practice English together, talking about interesting ideas in a clear and simple way. Perfect for you intermediate learners around that B1 level. We want to make learning English fun and engaging, like chatting with a friend. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's talk about something. Well, something a bit controversial today. Something that might make you say, I never thought about it like that. You know, when I was in school, I remember sitting in history class. We were learning about, some king from hundreds of years ago. And I remember thinking, this is interesting? Maybe? But why do I need to know this? I mean, really, how was knowing the name of King Henry VIII's sixth wife going to help me get a job or pay my bills or, live my life? Does anyone even remember her name without Googling it? Catherine Parr, by the way. See? Maybe useful for a trivia night. But for daily life. I also remember struggling through advanced math classes. Algebra, calculus. Oh boy, my brain hurt. And again, I thought, okay, maybe if I become a scientist or an engineer, but for most jobs, for my future job, am I ever going to use this? Honestly, I haven't. Not really. Maybe you feel the same way? Did you ever sit in a class, bored, wondering, what's the point? Well, today we're going to explore a really fascinating, maybe even a little bit shocking, idea from a book called The Case Against Education: Why the Education System is a Waste of Time and Money. Wow, right? A waste of time and money? That sounds crazy. The book is by an economist named Bryan Caplan. Now, don't worry. We're not going to get deep into complex economics. We're going to break down his main idea, his big argument, using stories and simple examples. His big, surprising idea is this. What if most of the reason education helps you get a good job isn't because of what you learn, but because going to school shows or signals something about you? Stick with me here. This is interesting. Let's dive in. So, we all kind of believe this, right? Go to school, study hard, get good grades, maybe go to university, and then you get a better job. You earn more money. Education equals success. That's the story we're told, and honestly, it seems true. People with university degrees generally earn a lot more money than people who only finished high school. That's a fact. The usual explanation for this is something economists call the human capital theory. Capital here just means something valuable you have. Human capital means the valuable skills and knowledge you have in your head. So the idea is, school builds your human capital. It teaches you important things: reading, writing, math, critical thinking, maybe specific job skills like computer programming or nursing. And because you have these useful skills, companies want to hire you, and they pay you more money because you can do valuable things for them. Makes sense, right? School makes you smarter and more skilled, so you get paid more. Simple. But here comes Bryan Caplan, the author of our book, and he looks at this simple picture and says, hold on a second. Wait a minute. He points to that feeling I had in history class, that feeling you might have had in math class. He asks, if education is really about learning useful job skills, then why do we spend so much time, years and years, learning things we almost never use in our actual jobs? Think about it. How much of the history you learned do you use at work? How much of the poetry you studied? How much advanced math? For most people, unless you become a history teacher or a poet or a mathematician, the answer is probably not much, right? He points out that even subjects we think are teaching general skills, like critical thinking from studying literature or problem solving from physics. The evidence shows these skills don't always transfer very well. Being good at analyzing a Shakespeare play doesn't automatically make you good at analyzing a business problem. Being good at solving a physics equation doesn't automatically make you good at solving a customer service issue. The skills often stay stuck in the classroom context. So, here's the puzzle Kaplan sees. People go to school for years, learn lots of things they don't use, but they still get paid more. Why? If it's not mostly about the skills they learned, what else could it be? It's like, imagine you wanted to become a great swimmer. So you sign up for lessons, but the lessons involve learning to play the guitar and reading ancient philosophy and memorizing bird calls. You'd think, this is crazy. How is this going to help me swim faster? Kaplan is kind of saying, our education system is a bit like that strange swimming school. We do a lot of things that don't seem directly connected to the goal of getting good job skills, but somehow people who finish the weird swimming school do become better swimmers, or at least they get treated like they are. Why? That leads us to his main answer. It's not just about learning, it's about signaling. Okay, signaling. What does that mean? Let's use an example from nature. Think about a peacock. You know, the male bird with the huge, beautiful, colorful tail. That tail is massive. It's heavy. It makes it harder to fly away from predators. It seems kind of useless, maybe even dangerous, right? So why do they have it? Well, biologists say the tail is a signal. It signals to the female peacocks, the peahens, hey, look at me. I am so strong and healthy that I can survive even with this giant, inconvenient tail. I must have really good genes. The tail itself isn't practical, but having it sends a powerful message about the peacock's quality. It's a signal. Bryan Caplan argues that education, especially higher education, like a university degree, works in a similar way. Getting through years of difficult classes, writing long papers, passing hard exams, it's tough. It requires intelligence, sure, but it also requires other things. It requires conscientiousness. That means being careful, responsible, hardworking, finishing tasks, even when they are boring. It requires conformity. That means following rules, showing up on time, doing what the teacher tells you. So, when you graduate, when you get that diploma, that piece of paper, Kaplan says it's like the peacock's tail. The diploma itself and the difficult journey you took to get it signals to employers, hey, look at me. I am intelligent enough, hardworking enough, conscientious, and obedient enough, conformist, to survive years of difficult schooling, even if a lot of it wasn't practical. I must be a good potential employee. Employers see the signal, the degree, and they think, okay, this person can stick with something difficult. This person can follow instructions. This person is probably smart and reliable. And that's why they hire you and pay you more. Not necessarily because you know about Shakespeare or calculus, but because getting the degree proved you have these desirable underlying traits. The education was a test, a hurdle, and you jumped over it. That's the signal. Think about it this way. Imagine two people apply for a job. One has a university degree, the other started university, did 3.5 years, learned almost everything the first person learned, but dropped out just before finishing. Who gets the job? Probably the person with the degree, right? And they'll likely get paid more too. Why? They learned basically the same stuff. Kaplan says it's the signal of completion. Finishing the race sends a much stronger signal than almost finishing. Economists even have a name for this: the sheepskin effect. Sheepskin is an old word for the parchment, the material diplomas used to be made of. The sheepskin effect is the extra money you earn just for getting the diploma itself, above and beyond the value of the years of study. It shows the signal is powerful. So the idea is, school teaches some skills, which I would call human capital, yes, especially basics like reading and math. But a huge part of its value, maybe even most of it, according to Kaplan, comes from signaling these hidden qualities: intelligence, conscientiousness, conformity. It's like a secret code that tells employers you're probably a good bet. Okay, so if a lot of education is just signaling, just showing off like a peacock, you might think, well, that sounds kind of fake or maybe inefficient, and Kaplan would agree, especially when we look at society as a whole. But first, let's think about you, the individual. If this signaling idea is true, is it still smart for you to go to university? Kaplan says, probably yes, from a purely selfish perspective, meaning just thinking about what's best for you personally. Getting that degree is often a very good decision. Why? Because employers use degrees as signals. Whether it's fair or not, whether it makes sense or not, that's how the job market often works. If you don't get the degree, employers might assume you lack those desirable traits: intelligence, conscientiousness, conformity. You get lumped in, grouped together with people who couldn't or wouldn't finish school. So, to compete for better jobs, you need to send the best signal you can. Getting the degree, even if you feel you didn't learn many practical skills, helps you stand out from the crowd. It's like, if everyone else is wearing a fancy suit to a job interview, you probably should wear one too, right? Even if the suit itself doesn't help you do the job better. You do it to fit in and send the right signal. So, for the individual, playing the signaling game often pays off. That's the selfish return on education. But now, let's zoom out. Let's think about society, about all of us together. What happens when everyone starts getting more and more education, mainly to send better signals? This is where Kaplan argues things become wasteful. He uses a great metaphor. Imagine you're at a crowded concert or sports game. Everyone is sitting down, but someone in front of you stands up to see better. Now you can't see. So, what do? You stand up too. Then the person behind you has to stand up. Soon, everyone is standing up. Now, is anyone seeing any better than when everyone was sitting? No! Everyone's view is basically the same as before, maybe even worse because of heads in the way. But now, everyone is uncomfortable, tired from standing. You all spent energy standing up, but the collective result wasn't really better. Kaplan says education can be like this. If a high school diploma used to be a good signal for a decent job, but then more and more people get one, it stops being a special signal. So people need a university degree to stand out. Then, if everyone gets a university degree, maybe people start needing a master's degree. This is called credential inflation. Credentials, like diplomas, become less valuable as more people have them, so everyone needs more credentials just to keep up, just to send a signal that's as good as everyone else's. From society's point of view, this can be very wasteful. We spend billions, trillions of dollars on education systems. Students spend years of their lives, time they could be working, earning money, starting families, pursuing hobbies. If a large part of that time and money is just spent on this signaling arms race, like everyone standing up at the concert, then we're spending huge resources without necessarily making our society much more productive or skilled overall. We're just raising the bar for entry, making everyone run faster, just to stay in the same place. That's the social return on education, what society gets back, and Kaplan argues it's much, much lower than the selfish return that individuals get. What about learning for fun, and what could we do? Now, you might be thinking, but Billy, education isn't just about jobs and money. What about learning for the sake of learning? What about becoming a well-rounded person, understanding history and art and science? What about becoming a better citizen? These are often called the humanistic goals of education. And that's a fair point. Kaplan addresses this. He asks, though, if people truly loved learning Shakespeare or advanced math for its own sake, wouldn't they do it voluntarily? Wouldn't they keep reading classic literature or studying history after they leave school? He points out that, for the most part, people don't. Most students find most academic subjects boring, or at least not interesting enough to pursue in their free time. We force them to learn these things for years, but do they really become lifelong lovers of these subjects? Often not. He's not saying no one enjoys learning these things. Of course, some people do, but he questions whether forcing everyone through years of academic subjects they don't like and won't use is the best way to achieve these humanistic goals, or if it just creates frustration and wasted time. Could that time be spent better? Maybe playing? Maybe pursuing hobbies they're passionate about? Maybe learning practical skills they will use? So, what does Kaplan suggest we do? If the system is wasteful, how could we fix it? He doesn't have easy answers, but his main ideas point towards reducing the pressure to signal. One idea is to reduce government funding for higher education. He argues that subsidies, government money that makes university cheaper, actually encourage more people to go just for the signal, fueling that credential inflation we talked about. If students had to pay more of the real cost, they might think more carefully. Is this degree really worth the time and money for the skills I'll get? Or am I just buying an expensive signal? Another idea is to put more emphasis on vocational education. That means training focused directly on specific job skills, like plumbing, car repair, computer coding, nursing, dental hygiene. Instead of spending years on abstract academic subjects, people could learn practical skills that lead directly to jobs. He thinks this would be less about signaling and more about building real, useful human capital. Now, it's important to remember, this is just one perspective. Bryan Caplan's view is controversial. Many people strongly disagree with him. They believe deeply in the power of traditional academic education to build skills, broaden minds, and create better citizens. And they have good arguments too. But Kaplan's book makes us think. It challenges our assumptions. It asks uncomfortable questions about a system we usually take for granted. Is he right? Is he wrong? Is he maybe partly right? So let's quickly recap the big idea from Bryan Caplan's The Case Against Education. He argues that while education does increase your earnings, a very large part of that benefit comes not from the useful skills you learn, human capital, but from the way education signals your underlying positive traits, like intelligence, hard work, and willingness to follow rules, to employers signaling. From an individual's point of view, getting educated to send that signal makes sense. This is a selfish benefit. But from society's point of view, if everyone is just getting more education to signal, it leads to credential inflation, like everyone standing up at a concert, which is wasteful of time and money, or what I would call a low social benefit. He suggests maybe we should rely less on forcing abstract academics and perhaps focus more on direct vocational training and reduce subsidies that encourage signaling. Wow. That's a lot to think about, isn't it? It definitely makes you look at your own school experiences or your children's schooling in a new light. What do you think? Does this idea of signaling make sense to you? When you look back at your education, how much of it felt truly useful for your life and job? How much felt like jumping through hoops, like doing difficult things just to prove you could do them? Was your degree more like a toolkit full of useful skills, or more like that peacock's tail? Impressive, hard to get, and a powerful signal. There's no single right answer here, of course. But thinking about these questions, discussing them, is a great way to practice your English and engage with complex ideas. That's all the time we have for today on English with Billy. I hope you found that interesting and maybe a little bit challenging. Remember, the goal is to learn English while exploring fascinating topics. Keep practicing, keep listening, keep thinking. And join me next time for another conversation. Until then, take care, and bye for now.